Congressional candidate for the Illinois 1st District, Charise Williams has collaborated with community organizations throughout Chicago and Cook County to increase economic development through employment, education, strengthening families and households, and community building. As Congresswoman, she says she is committed to representing the Illinois 1st District in Congress and ensuring the right policies are in place to build and sustain its communities for now and future generations. The Chicago Defender spoke with Charise Williams about why she's running for office and her vision for the 1st Congressional District. So what made you decide to run for a congressional seat?
Yeah, so I decided to run at this particular time, honestly, do my work that I have with ICEJA and the work I did at Chicago Federation of Labor. Now, remember, I ran for Cook County Commissioner in 2017-18 because my godson was brutally murdered by gun violence, and that crime is still going unsolved. So I became very active, even more active into the community than I already was, particularly around criminal justice reform and just economic development as a whole. But when this role came up and my job at ICEJA, I saw so much resources and money coming in through the state, and our communities weren't getting it. Like I managed maybe over a $500 million budget every year that did programming around domestic violence, criminal justice reform, mental health services, community and police training, just kind of the array of services. And I would get calls from every other part of the state, from every other congressman, every other senator saying, you got this money, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. We didn't get that same kind of interaction from some of our leadership. And the truth be told, when this opportunity happened, we're getting $17 billion in infrastructure funding. I couldn't just stand by and watch us not get any of those funding. There's so much resources that we historically haven't gotten. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I was asked to run. I did a lot of prayer, talking with my family, and honestly feel like I'm the best person for this job.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things our readers have expressed to us is this disappointment with some of our elected officials, where they come out to the neighborhoods and churches and campaign and they get elected, and then they forget about the issues that are important to the Black community. Mm-hmm. So if elected, how are you going to balance that responsibility of being of keeping the issues of the Black community in the forefront with the actual other parts of the job that come along with being a congressman?
Well, the job of a congressman is, at its basic core, to design and implement legislation and to provide resources to its constituents. That's the job at the core of if you are a good legislator. So my job would be to not leave the community, to continue doing what I've been doing. And honestly, I would say, look at somebody's record, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at my record, regardless of what position I held or who I was with, I was always accessible. My word was my bond. You know, my dad's a retired Marine, so once you say something, you got to do it because lives depend on it. Mm-hmm. And my kind of the plan we have for the office is something I've already started. So one of the things I know from residents is that they can never find the information. Either people are trying to hide it from them, they don't want them to have it, they don't know where to look, or they've been told no so many times that they just stop looking. So one of the laws that even LaShawn Ford is going to implement, working to implement on the state, is to have a central database for anybody who has any resources, state or federal. They go to one website and it's all there, right? It tells you who the contact is, what it's for, how much, when, how, where, why. I want to do that for the state on my website, particularly for the district, to include not just federal and state resources, but for issues that are affecting like our farmers, for issues that are affecting our trucks and our transportation. And we can go to all these different places, but if we can have one central resource where somebody knows, I may not know anywhere else to go, but I can go to Congressman Williams and I'll get something.
Mhm.
So we're already doing that. We just we're sending out information about resource fairs that are happening this week and the next 2 weeks. I mean, these are things that I've already been doing and will continue to do. The job of a congresswoman is to service residents. That's in the job to do it. So I don't want to lose my job. I'm good. I will be good at what I've done. And so it's not a juggle for me. It'll be doing what it's supposed to be doing. I'll still be accessible. I'll still be here like I've always been.
Now, what do you think the most pressing issues are for the first district?
Is that we're losing our babies. We're losing the innocence of our children, where the crime is a piece of it, but it's also just the mental health services that come around it, that they listen and they go to school and they have to deal with all of these issues from, poverty and, and not even just jobs, because there's a difference between having a job and having a career and being able to support your family. So just to say that we need more jobs, I think is honestly not the full picture, right? There needs to be more of a prevailing wage or a livable wage as opposed to even just a minimum wage. Right? The issues, the district is very diverse. So in our urban district, we are worried, and I'm worried about every time my son leaves, walks out the door, I might not see him again, right? You go further south, their concern is, their infrastructure. I mean, their Dixmoor didn't have water for 10 days or 7 days, right? That is not necessarily a concern that we have in the city, but it's a bigger concern when you go down south. When you go to Will County and Frankfurt, their issues are the trucking and the roads and having safe roads and safe bridges, right? So I think overall, the biggest issue is really just real economic development. If people feel safe in their communities or if people feel supported in their communities, regardless of where they live, then people will act accordingly. And I think people will take pride in what they do and they'll feel safer when they leave their house and when they get on the road. They won't worry about a truck speeding down their side road and possibly hitting a kid. So I think that the biggest issue is real economic development for real problems, and not people just talking, but actually having real solutions for real problems.
Well, that's another thing, as we look at what Congress looks like now, it's divisive. It's very, it's not a lot of headway being made. And a lot of politicians talk about, reaching across the aisle and making those connections to get certain things done. But what we're finding is the GOP is very united right now in stripping away civil rights, reproductive rights, voting rights. What can you tell the Chicago Defender readers that will let us know that, yeah, you can reach across the aisle, but are you going to be a fighter? Like how they're fighting differently right about now.
They are. Well, I've always been a fighter. And yes, we have to reach across the aisle, but to a point. You don't reach across the aisle and lose your soul and not stand for what you're going to fight for. I'm held accountable to the people in the first district and to the state as a whole. And things like Voting Rights Act and Women's Reproductive Rights Act, to me, that's a no conversation. Like, this is what we will fight for, and then work on those ones that are in between. So yes, it's very decisive, but we know there's 2 Democrats, who are kind of wavering back and forth. And even on the women's side, there's a few Republicans who under oath said that they would support women's choice. So those are like those 1 and 2s are the ones that we would fight with. But yes, will I fight? I'll be unapologetic about fighting. And I understand that going to Congress is about reaching across the aisle and that everyone can't win, but there's some things that you just cannot back down on.
Right.
And having the right to vote and giving a woman the way to choose, the fact that the GOP is trying to control a woman's body is ridiculous beyond what I can even comprehend. Or even it's insane.
Yeah.
So from a fighting standpoint, I am a fighter, but I'll go all the way with.
Yeah. What would you tell Chicago Defender readers? What makes you the best candidate for the first district?
We are, I mean, to your point, there's so much things happening in our society right now that it feels like we're getting under attack from every different angle. And I am, if you look at all the candidates, the only candidate that has the experience and the knowledge to be able to go in on day one and actually do the job or what's required of the job. You know, none of us have been in the job, but what's required of the job is to design and implement legislation, to bring resources, and to be a fighter and be unapologetic about being fight. I don't have the baggage that some of the other candidates have. I'm literally from the community, so the only ones I'm beholden to are to the community. They got me here. I have the experience in applying and receiving funding and the distributing funding across the state in an equitable manner so that it actually goes to the people that look like us and goes to the community that need it the most. I've been successful at it, from the CARES Act funding to the ARPA funding, $50 million, $20 million in CARES funding, $100+ million in R3 funding, where I designed an equitable way to distribute the money so that it was actually given to community groups and organizations that were doing the real work. When we go to Congress, there's no time for somebody to try to figure out how to do this and how to read policy and legislation. We would need somebody who already knows how to do it. And out of all the candidates, I'm the only one that's dealt with federal and state funding. I'm the only one that's worked with people on both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrat, because when you get federal funding, at that point, it doesn't matter who you are because the state already has it, right? And having to be an advocate on making sure that all one group didn't get sucked up all the money, right? So I've already had to do that and struggle that and been successful at it. And I have a record to prove it. So I'm the best candidate for the job because I'm the one that can do the job from day one.
Let me ask you one more question. We kind of touched on it at the last forum. What would you say to those that say she's never held elected office? You know, why would we elect her to Congress when she hasn't been an alderman? She hasn't, you know, kind of gone through certain channels that are typical of certain politicians. What would you say to people that say, you know what, she hasn't had an elective office? Why would I vote for her?
I'd say good. It's a good thing I haven't had an elected office. It's a good thing. One, as I said before, I'm not beholden to anyone. I don't owe anybody any political favors. I literally got here because I'm good at what I do and I'm smart, and the people, my family and my friends and God got me here. But this is about not having an elected office. This is about someone who knows how to do the job and actually cares about the community. I'm here because I care. I'm not doing this. I had a great, I've had a great job and a great experience in what I've been doing, but I genuinely care about this work. And historically, what we've seen is that people who are elected offices or have a history, everything still looks the same. Nothing's changed. I-57 in my area still look the same now than it did 20 years ago. So the definition of insanity is, right, doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So, we need a fresh vision. We need somebody with fresh ideas. We don't need someone who's going to do the same thing they've been doing and nothing has changed. So I would say good that I'm not an elected official. I think that's the best thing for the district.
The Illinois primary is June 28th, 2022, with the general election happening on November 8th. The Chicago Defender encourages all readers to register and vote in the primary and general elections. For more on congressional candidate Charise Williams, please visit chariseforcongress.com. This is Danielle Sanders reporting for the Chicago Defender.